Alright guys, Tyler down here at Emerald City Guitars, back for another installment of our weekly video series that just so happens to sometimes take a month and a half to come out. I got to apologize right off the hop. I know we were trying to do these pretty regularly, like a weekly thing, but it has just been insane in the shop since my last video. My lead time went from a couple weeks to now a couple months. We've just never been busier, which is great. So any free time that I have had since our last video has just been me down here getting caught up on customer repairs and just putting out all the fires that I can. But we're here now, it's Easter Sunday, got a couple hours. So let's get going on this Gretsch again. So in our last episode, of course, got the neck off. It's pretty dramatic, but obviously it's off now. Got all the glue cleaned up. And this week, we're gonna tackle a couple of the issues happening at the headstock. Some delaminations from the neck plies, and also some lifting of this headstock veneer. So probably not going to be the longest video, probably not going to be the most exciting, but we do have to take care of these issues. So yeah, let's get to it. All right, so what do we got going on? Up here at the headstock, we have two major issues. The first one being the separation right here, kind of right through the tuner holes. Of these separate neck plies. These were joints, it's not one piece, it's not technically a crack. And the other issue is the delamination of our headstock veneer. You can see it, it's probably the worst right there, but it's happening pretty similarly on this other side too. And you can kind of even see from the front, I don't know if I'll pick this up, it almost looks like the headstock veneer is shrinking. Because this outer edge here is visible. You know, if this is a celluloid headstock cap, I'd say that, you know, would maybe be possible. That does sometimes happen. But as we know, that's just this wing of the headstock pulling out, making it look like that. So the order that we take care of these two issues is really, really critical. And the reason is because if we glue the headstock back on first and then try to squeeze those back in, these are going to be, you know, glued to the front of the headstock. It's not going to want to move. So we're going to have to address these two first, get the headstock basically to its right original size. And then once that's taken care of, we can get the headstock veneer back down. So there's really no trick to this repair. It's pretty much as you'd imagine. We just need to get glue in these joints and clamp them down, which is simple enough. The big thing, or the big challenge in something like this is cleaning this joint so that when we get the glue in there, it's going to want to hold the wood together, get good penetration, and basically, you know, work like it's supposed to work. You know, it's always tough on tight cracks like this, just because it's a challenge to get inside. It'd almost be easier, you know, if this whole thing was separated and we can take off, clean both sides, and get a really good joint. However, you know, on something like this where it's half separated, it can really be a challenge to get in there and dig out all that gunk that would foul up our joint and make it weaker than it should be. So yeah, it's probably going to be pretty boring to watch, but let's get to cleaning out these cracks. So I'm going to do something here. You can kind of see when I dig in here, this crack is wanting to continue to open, which is fine. I need it to open a little bit, but it's going beyond, you know, the part that's already cracked, and now it's pulling apart this joint where I don't want it to pull apart. So I'm going to use this spool clamp actually to reinforce the good original glue joint so it's not spreading, which obviously is not the idea, but basically make it safe for me to open this up as wide as I need to in order to dig out all the crap and stuff that's in that joint. So, go there. I'll sometimes use a second spatula if I'm trying to kind of pry or prop a crack open, and I'll basically use the second one kind of as a proppant to get this one a little bit wider so I can get in there. It is important to note too, when you're cleaning out a crack like this, there's a lot of tools coming in and out kind of right around the sharp edge of this crack, and if you're not careful, it's really easy to start rounding over those edges ever so slightly, which when you go to glue it back, it's going to look really bad and really apparent. So that's just one thing to be careful about when you're doing something like this. So it looks like this has been glued up before. There is some sort of adhesive, looks like probably super glue in there, which, yeah, that's not good for us. Now, this is a really great angle for the video, but it's kind of tough. I want to get my face kind of down where the camera is to see exactly what's going down there, so it might look a little bit awkward. And that's funny, man. You really wouldn't, at least I would have never guessed how much time goes into making a video. Even if it's something really simple like this would probably be, you know, a 20 or 25-minute job if I were to just sit down and go for it. But making a video about it, I mean, you know, people assume that it'll take a little bit longer to do a video, but man, it's like 3 or 4 or 5 times as long. And then you got to edit, and it's content creation is it's no joke, man. And I'm not saying that like a woe is me, feel bad for me story, because I love doing this and I'm gonna keep doing it. But it really makes you appreciate cats that guys like Ted Woodford, for example. I'm sure most of you probably know who he is. Makes you appreciate somebody who can create really interesting content and just make these awesome videos, but also just do it consistently and like prolifically. I think he's doing one a week, multiple a week. It's something you really don't realize. Just the amount of work that goes into it until you try it, which I encourage anyone to do. It's definitely it's a humbling experience. All right, so something I did there, I got a little bit of sticky back 320 that I just put on the side of our number 7 X-Acto blade there, or number 11, whatever, the regular one. And I'm gonna use that to basically, yeah, again, just clean out the crack, get a little abrasive inside and try to knock some of that oxidation, some of that dust off each wall of the crack. Again, I know I said it, but it's super important to keep this straight up, not roll. Kind of, this kind of work can be really tedious. I don't totally hate it. I think it can be kind of therapeutic, but if you're not disciplined, you can kind of lose focus and start rolling over that edge. And once that happens, there's really not much you can do, and it looks like hell. So, yeah. Worth mentioning too, we're not really trying to remove material, or at least we're not trying to remove wood. This is really just a way to get that oxidation and some of that old glue out. We're not trying to reprofile any of that crack. Just trying to get all the old crap out of there. So we've got a big chunk of glue right here on this side. That's really not wanting to let go. So yeah, I'll just use my little 320 there and get that down as close as I can to the original wood. It's worth noting too, on this particular job, this separation happened along, a seam. I know I've mentioned that before. I mean, you can see up there, these are wings added onto the headstock. That means, it was glued once and it was made. It was glued at least one more time after that. So our choice of adhesive is pretty critical in something like this. No matter how many hours I sit here, scraping away, this is never going to be a perfectly clean joint. It's never going to be ideal. And we kind of have to keep that in mind going forward. Hide glue is excellent, but it doesn't do all that well on dirty joints, a joint like this. So I think I'm gonna just use Titebond. I feel totally good about that. It's typically, it's not a good gap filler at all, and there shouldn't be huge gaps here, but I have found it to hold up a little bit better in dirty joints. So I think I'm gonna do that. You can see, yeah, that's not going to pick up on the camera, but it is looking a lot better than it was. The sides are a lot more square. Let's pull this out. Let's see. Sure, so when you pull that together, yeah, not too bad. And on one that's been glued up before, obviously we can only do what we can do on this. There's been some pretty rough work prior. So yeah, I'm gonna prop it open on this side, do a little work on here, then be ready to glue this up. Yeah, this side of the tuner doesn't look too bad at all. That's usually the case. Higher up in the crack where it is tighter, it just stands to reason that not as much gunk and dirt and stuff is going to get in that crack and foul it up. So yeah, this is looking pretty good on this side. I won't need a whole lot. Let's just get another clamp on there and kind of get a preview for how that's going to close up. Yeah, that's about as good as we can hope for on this one. Another thing to keep in mind as well is that this is going to be under the tuner. All these will be under the tuners. So if it doesn't look totally factory perfect, it's not the end of the world as long as it's structurally solid, which is what we're looking for. So let's take a look at this other side. This one isn't nearly as bad as the one we just tackled, so let's take a look. Yeah, this one's looking a lot tighter, and I don't think this one's been glued before. It's super, super, super clean and coming together super right. So I think I'm gonna pretty much leave this alone. Doesn't look like there's much of anything in there. And that's something to try to recognize too early on. If you don't need to get in there, if you think it's gonna be an okay joint, there's no use in getting the knives and everything in and out and in and out. You really just risk messing up this edge and making it look worse. So yeah, I'm happy with that, and I think we're good. All right, so for the headstock veneer, we're kind of just gonna do the same thing that we did on these cracks. Got a little 320 sticky back on the spatula, and again, not much to it, just being really careful not to slip and round over the edge of the binding or the bottom edge of the binding slot in this case. So I don't think this side has been re-glued. So all we're really trying to do here is take that really thin layer of oxidation that's formed, just so we can get the best glue joint we possibly can. Like I said before, don't spend any more time than you absolutely have to getting in and out of cracks like this. Just the more work you do, the more likely it is that that you'll do something on the way in or on the way out and damage that edge, which is really that edge is what makes a joint look good or not. So it's pretty critical, and I think that's about all I'll do. And yeah, you can see that's coming down really nice tight there. So I'm happy with that. Got the other side. Now this side I think has been re-glued. Looks like there's some oozing schmutz there, and it kind of feels like it too. It's pretty crunchy. So yeah, this joint is a little bit more critical, or rather these headstock veneer joints are a little bit more critical just because they'll be a lot more visible, being not covered by tuners. I guess they're partially obscured by the buttons, but there's a lot more visible joint, especially on the base side, which I think is going to be the better joint, so that's good. It's just good luck. Yeah, there's something in there. Yeah, there's a little glue there. It's important too to get both sides of the joint. I just have obviously paper on one side here. So on a normal joint, we'd be definitely wanting to get any sort of sanding dust out of that joint because it will weaken the joint. However, in this case, again, we just got to do the best we can. Blowing it out is pretty much our best course of action there, and doing as much as we can with the blades. I'm feeling a pretty smooth joint now, so I think we're almost there. Let's see how this is coming together. Yeah, with these joints that have already been glued, again, I sound like a broken record, but we can only do as good, as we can. And when part of this joint lets go and part of it sticks, kind of like it did here, you can see on either end, that's where that old adhesive kind of squeezed out. It's totally solid here, and it lifted there, so when we're cleaning out the joint, there's always going to be kind of a buffer between the stuff you've cleaned out and the old glue that it's just so tight that it's impossible to get anything down in there to get it out. So it's never going to look totally perfect. You can kind of see there, or maybe you can't see. It's really, really minor. And especially, you know, with a guitar like this that has a bunch of vibe and character, it's not a super big deal, but that is something that you'll see. All right, so here we are ready for glue up. I will say under normal circumstances, I would just glue these two, clamp it, let it sit overnight, and then do the faceplate the following day. But because this is show business, I think I want to try to do it all at once, just so I don't have to lug, you know, all my camera stuff again down tomorrow and set everything back up. So in order to do that, I've made a couple little tools off camera. I took a jaunt over to the bandsaw. Made up these two little cauls, which will fit perfectly around these edges of the headstock, lined with a little bit of leather there. And then I made this as well, which obviously is just the headstock shape. This was a caul for the headstock veneer, basically. So the pressure from the clamps will be nice and evenly distributed. And the veneer will lay nice and flat and won't be all wrinkled or anything like that. So again, I've never done it like this, so I think we're just gonna go for it. Again, we're using Titebond, so we're gonna have plenty of time. And yeah, see how this goes. I'm gonna wipe all this up, so you can don't have to be too careful about where our glue goes right now. Some guys will use a suction cup, a little tiny one, to kind of push the glue into a joint like this. I find that squeezing just like that similarly takes advantage of the capillary action of water-based glue. So I'm seeing down, I don't know if you can see down in the tuner hole, getting good penetration all the way down to the veneer. So I feel pretty good about that. Preemptive wipe down. Right, pretty good at that. And all this glue that'll be down in the tuner holes and the little tuner screw holes as well. I can clean that out later. That won't really matter. Perfect. Getting good squeeze out all throughout the joint. That's what you want to see. To the top. For this one, I'll use the same spatula, obviously without sandpaper, but pretty similar technique in that. Just get in. Oh, make sure you guys can see. Again, this same technique. See it working its way. You can kind of see through the tuner hole how deep that glue is penetrating this way. Pretty good. That nice even squeeze out all on that outer edge rather. That's what we want to see. Sure. Great. Nice. All right, so let's get to it. We're going to start. This right there. Protect that neck. Over like this. Slip a little bit. Nice. Cool, we got the squeeze out. I feel good about that. Throw one more. See, I've got some surgical tubing on the, I guess, the shaft of this spool clamp. That's because when you're clamping something like I am right now, you really reef hard on these, this rod will start to bend, and when clamping like this, it's going to bend downward and leave a nice nice imprint on your vintage finish there. So this little surgical tubing protects the finish from that. All right, don't want to over tighten these two. You can starve the joint, basically squeeze out all of the glue rather than just some of it. So I feel good about where that's at right now. All right, let's see if we can make this work. Turn that down. So I'm not sure there's ever a good time for your camera's memory card to fill up and stop recording. But I'm pretty sure that during a glue up is a pretty bad time. And that's what's happened. So you just can't win. So we lost like the second half of that glue up, but it all went relatively to plan, nothing too crazy. If I wasn't clear enough about it kind of before and during, I just have these two clamps, obviously squeezing from both sides, and then on the veneer glue up, I just did one pair of spool clamps through that caul and through the tuner holes to really localize that pressure, and also allow us to do these side clamps at the same time. It's pretty straightforward. We got really good squeeze out all around all of the joints, so I feel really good about it. I'm going to leave this overnight, unclamp it tomorrow, and there shouldn't be any surprises. All right, so today is tomorrow. We got the clamps off, we got the jig off, did some really minor squeeze out cleanup, and yeah, this is about as good as we can expect. Obviously not perfect, but given what we started with, I'm happy with this result, and I think the customer will be too. But this is all I'm going to do for today. I got to get out of here. I will make the next video sooner than this one was. I really got to get going on it. I'm thinking next time start addressing some of the binding issues on the neck. It's pulling probably halfway down the neck. The owner did reach out to me and said that the gentleman from whom he got the guitar had found the original nut, the brass nut. So he sent that to him, so he's going to bring that to me, which means I got to get this one out, and it's been glued in with some mystery adhesive, so that could be interesting. And then yeah, just kind of get going on the neck joint itself. Looking down, kind of might start finish touch up, but mostly just kind of see what we have and get whatever is on there off, because there's a bunch of, I don't know if it's supposed to be adhesive or finish, but there's just a bunch of crap all over this, and then the body side of the joint as well. So we'll get going on that next time. Again, it will be sooner rather than later. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but that just happens sometimes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys soon.